So I had something to say about the crop circles first.
Mm,
There was a lady, I can't remember her name, but she did a lot of research into the whole 9/11 thing, and she talked about dustification
mm-hmm. Yep.
with the buildings and how there was not as much of a seismic activity as there should have been for a building collapsing inside of its footprint like that.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to show off a technology and see if anybody could figure it out, a lot of the same technologies could have been used to fold over plants in the UK to be able to kind of make a spectacle if you were kind of using a secret technology that hadn't been used before.
Yes.
It
Like it
I can't remember off the top
pulverizes.
of my head who that lady is, but it's
Judy
worth looking
Wood.
into.
Yeah, I
Does
think
that
that's
sound
it.
right? Judy
Yeah.
Wood.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, 100%.
Yeah, she's got some really interesting videos on YouTube. Definitely recommend listening to those. But that's a good point. I never put those two together. You know, the way if we're gonna say this is some weird secret tech or something doing those crop circles, they do kind of just like pulverize, disintegrate things, and they if you're going to take the reports that they actually do something strange to the plant life that people can't really explain, yeah, maybe there's something there. That's an interesting connection.
Yeah, and a lot of those microspherules that they found at the 9/11 site, they also find at crop circles.
Hmm. That is interesting. Is that something she said, or is that something that you've put together?
That's something that she said.
Interesting. I have to go back and
Yeah.
listen to her stuff. I remember seeing one of her. She had a long video, and I watched some of it, and I was very impressed. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's same here. So the reason I actually called in tonight
Yeah.
is I wanted to tell you about an experience I had in my trailer that was probably the most visceral um, uh, experience I've ever had with something of the paranormal variety.
Let's hear it.
This was during 2020. I had just turned 33 years old, and it was the height of the pandemic, and I was on furlough from my job.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I had nothing to do. So I was playing video games and watching YouTube at like 11:30 at night. And the TV was on. I had just turned on my video game and it was a white loading screen. So the way my trailer is set up is I use the back door by the kitchen, bedrooms in the front. It's a 27-foot travel trailer I'm living in while I'm building a cabin.
Mm.
And the TV, the light shines into the bathroom, which is between the bedroom and the living room, and it kind of reflects off of the mirror above the sink so I can see I don't turn on any lights. So I go and I'm gonna take a leak real quick before I have to start playing this video game. And so I'm taking a leak and I kind of look up and there's a dark wood cabinet above my toilet, and there's a, you know how kind of sometimes with the matte finish you'll get that white line across the center of a cabinet where there's a reflection of light,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll have like one person could be like blocking it and stuff, and that's pretty standard, like you know what your reflections and everything look like in where you live.
Yep.
So I'm taking a leak and I look up and there's another shadow behind me
Hmm.
blocking the light
Hat Man.
from. Sorry, go ahead.
Hat Man.
No, there was no hat that I
Okay.
could tell.
Uh-oh.
Um, it was basically like, I don't know if you've ever seen Full Metal Alchemist, but it was kind of like the black guy that's the truth. It was just like the vague shape of a human
Okay.
in blackness.
Okay.
And it was just a shadow, and I was like, my initial response was, I'm just going to keep peeing and hope that goes away. And so I just kept doing my business, put myself back in my drawers, and I look up and it's still there.
Hmm.
And I kind of at that point, like, I don't know if you've ever been in like a life or death situation where um, it's like your life is not in your control.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately.
I've been face to face with a mountain lion
Hmm.
in the woods and it was like crouched down, tail flicking, and it decided not to eat me. And that was
Lucky.
kind of the same. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. The same kind of power I felt from this thing,
Mm.
but I didn't feel any malevolence.
Hmm.
It was like a loaded gun on a table.
Hmm.
And then it was like my in my head, I'm like, well, if this is how I go out, I'm gonna at least see this effort before I go out.
Right.
And so as soon as I started to turn around, my sound bar turned off, which plunged my entire trailer into darkness. And I felt this breeze kind of blow by me, and it just left. And then the sound bar turned on and the light came back on.
Whoa. That's wild.
And it was weird because like right before I turned around, I almost got the impression like it was kind of like one of those things where you feel feelings, I guess, but it was almost like a dog cocking its head, like, "Oh, you saw me,"
Hmm.
kind of a thing.
Whoa.
And then as soon as I started to turn around, it was like, "Oh, I got to get out of here."
That's crazy. Are you the first owner of that trailer?
Yeah. Well, no, sorry, I'm not. I'm the second owner.
And was there anything weird with the previous owner?
Nope. They
Hmm.
were still alive when I bought it.
Okay. Interesting. Had you experienced any death in the family or anything around that time?
Not around that time, but like probably about 3 years before my grandpa had passed away. But
Hmm.
I have thought about this a ton, like
Mm-hmm.
really meditated on it,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't feel like my grandpa.
Right.
Like my grandpa was a logger.
Mm.
Like I live out in Granite Falls in the Pacific Northwest. I'm about 45 minutes northeast of Everett up in the foothills,
Okay.
man. Like this was not a log truck driver like the Irish immigrant that was like slogging beers. It wasn't that.
Right. You think it was like, what do you think it was?
It felt Keelian.
Can you explain that?
It felt like I observed an observer.
Interesting. And it was
Like
coming to observe you, or was it just passing through that neighborhood? Like, why do you think it was there?
I don't honest. Well, I think I was going through a large change in my thinking at that point in my life. I was raised in a very specific way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness,
Mm-hmm.
and I was kind of coming out of that thinking pattern at
Mm.
the time. That 2020 COVID kind of gave me a chance to think and
Interesting.
like really trace down some of the questions I had.
Right.
And so I kind of think maybe it was like, oh, this guy's going through like a dark night of the soul
Mm.
curiosity, trying to understand what reality really is. Let's see what he does. Like that's kind of the vibe I got.
Did it help you in your way? Did it make you feel more confident in questioning that and moving away from that religion, or did it push you back?
It actually it was neither.
Hmm.
It was neutral, and it was kind of one of those things where it felt like I just had to like answer my own questions. And in all honesty, I haven't been scared of death since then.
Oh wow, yeah. I was going to ask you how it's affected you. So you haven't? Were you scared of death before?
I was scared of the dying part, not the
Mm-hmm.
death.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the witnesses have a pretty flowery view of what happens after you die.
What
Um,
is it? I don't
but
actually know.
sorry, go ahead.
What is that? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so they basically say if you die before Armageddon, you get resurrected and you get to be resurrected in a perfect body and you get to like meet all of your dead loved ones in a perfect paradise earth.
Right.
Like you don't go
Yes.
to heaven, you don't go to hell, you're just asleep.
Didn't
And
that
then
happen
you
to
wake
Tony
up
Soprano?
and it's like, "Oh, hey,
Maybe.
this is awesome.
Right.
Grandma, oh, we can have a foot race? Sweet."
Right. And so, did that like does that idea of the afterlife? Do you still have that, or did that change?
Somewhat, but from a lot of the research and stuff that I've done, it doesn't seem like that's precisely,
Mm-hmm.
but I still have questions. Like I'm still in the like I don't know
Mm.
phase.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm smart enough to know I don't know what I know.
Yeah, and then 2020 was a crazy time to just live through,
Yeah.
especially 33. That's a wild time, and people there was a spike in these experiences, whether it was with entities or people seeing things in the sky. That 2020 was a very bizarre time across the whole planet.
Oh, 100%. And like it's weird because it feels like I'm one of those weird people that every like 4 to 8 years something weird happens in my life.
Hmm.
And like that was like that hit right on that 8 year mark.
Interesting. And had anything happened since?
Yeah, actually I heard a scream in the woods on my property, like it would be a Sasquatch or some kind of spirit scream in the woods if I had to like peg it.
That's
But
interesting.
it was in the same spot that back in 2016, 17, I heard what sounded like a dog shaking its head in the collar, jingling, or somebody jingling change in their pocket
Hmm.
coming from the woods in that exact same direction.
Well, that's interesting. The woods are a strange place.
Dude, and you know what's funny? So, like, coming from the West Coast, I don't have the introduction into Appalachia and all that stuff. So, my initial thought was like, oh, there's a jingle jingle. Maybe that's a stray dog. So, I started whistling into the woods at night.
Interesting. How'd that work?
And that was a bad decision. Um, I it was me and my brother down there, and we had only had like a couple beers. We were just chilling, and both me and my brother kind of stood up and like goosebumps, and the Oz effect kicked in, where there were no crickets, there were no frogs, you couldn't hear the river,
Hmm.
and we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, nah, and we just threw our chairs in the truck and doused the fire and got the hell out of there.
Yep, yep, yeah. I've had those experiences in the woods. You just realize, yeah, I'm not gonna stay here for this. I don't need to figure out whatever that is. There's
Dude,
something out
100%.
there. Something out there. Well, I appreciate you calling in and sharing that story, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your show.
Thank you.
Um, this is pretty awesome. I love
Awesome.
being able to hear other people's experiences and stuff like that. This is great, man. I'm glad
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that.